Welcome, guys. Welcome back to the Talent Spark podcast. Today we are joined by Jenn Fenwick. It'd be great to have you along, Jenn. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
So, hi, great to be here today. I'm Jenn Fenwick, sitting in Edinburgh, Scotland, although not quite a Scottish accent sitting here, as I'm sure you've already picked up. So I am a career and leadership coach. I work mostly in STEM industries. I've spent the last 16 years working for mostly global pharmaceutical, fast-growing biotechnology and tech companies. First of all, when I moved to Scotland, I fell into really a recruitment role. So in those early days, and I was working with organisations on how to recruit the best talent, the top talent. And then as I progressed my career, I was looking at, once we've got those awesome people in organisations, how do we support their development? How do we create awesome career paths to retain them? And coaching was always part of each and every role that I had. I was managing my own team. I managed a European team. I was working for a company as a global talent head, and I was coaching my own team there, but also coaching leaders who were moving into new leadership roles. And then, so I've about 4 years ago, I set up my coaching business, and I absolutely can't believe that it's been that time's flown so quickly. And when I do this process, and you add up all the years, you just realize that you're much older than maybe you feel or you realize. So yes, 4 years I've been doing my own coaching. What I work mostly with leaders who are transitioning into new leadership roles. So that kind of that quite complex period, those first 6 months in new leadership roles across all levels, working with leaders to really, master the art of that kind of transition period and make sure they're having maximum impact. So that's really where I specialise. But I'm actually working increasingly with a lot of burnt out leaders. So I see coaching as giving leaders that strategic headspace to pull them out of the busy day to day to solve big problems. And I get to do this day in, day out. But I think I spoke to you before that coaching for me is not just limited to kind of my professional years. Coaching. So coaching for me first kick-started in the sporting world. Growing up in New Zealand, I had the awesome opportunity to play pretty much every sport under the sun. And actually, my first coaching role was coaching my sister's netball team. So I'm not quite sure how she felt about that at the time. But we're still talking anyway. So coaching for me started at a really early age. And if you think about the sporting world, everyone's got a coach, even from those junior years. But that kind of spurred. I guess it's funny how I've kind of come full circle from find that thing I loved, aged 16, to now actually having built a business around that. But it's so much around working with people and supporting people to realise and reach their potential. And I get to do that day in, day out now, which is pretty awesome. So I'm really delighted to be here. Thanks.
So listen, we've talked a wee bit, or we're going to talk a wee bit today about leadership. It's a key topic and really important to our listeners is developing good leaders. So, there's that age-old question in a world where good leadership is so critical nowadays. Do you think that leaders are born, or can they be made? Can they be developed?
Oh, do you want? Yeah, I mean, it's a great question actually, and I think, obviously, leadership's evolving, and we're looking at, what does leadership mean, And I think absolutely. Look, there are definitely people who are natural leaders, And I think again we were kind of chatting about, leadership isn't just when you are managing or leading a team. You can, my first time leading was actually, on the netball court, on the touch rugby field when I was captaining teams, at school. So, so from quite an early age, people can step into those leadership, roles. So I think so absolutely. I think some people are born with natural leadership, but I don't think that if you really are motivated to be a leader. I think you can develop those skills as long as it's coming from the right place. So you're wanting to be a leader for the right reasons, not necessarily ego, but actually, because we've all seen it. Look, you only have to just switch on the news and you can spot the leaders who are doing it for their reasons. So I think that, so I definitely think there's natural leaders, and that's awesome. But I think, if people are motivated and want to be a leader, that they can develop that. And I think both groups have learning and opportunities to develop that. So I think it all comes back to, good leaders are avid and keen learners,
Well, that was the next part of the question, actually. So what does make a good leader? What are the characteristics of common people that are, that you see are really good leaders?
I've been really, really fortunate. I've worked with some incredible leaders, not just from, in my corporate time. I've had some really inspiring leaders that I've had the opportunity to work with, but also as a coach, and it's amazing because some of the most incredible leaders I've worked with don't necessarily see themselves as strong leaders. Sometimes they're just doing the do, and I think that's what I love is when leaders, it's not about them, it's about the people around them. So I think what makes a great leader. Absolutely someone who's a great listener, and actually actively listens to the people around them. Someone who can bring in the right people to do the right jobs, so is quite comfortable with that. Someone who can build that kind of compelling vision of where, their organization or their team is going. So be able to build that vision and have the kind of strategy to back it up, and be able to communicate that to the people around them. Be able to make sure that they have the right people to then, to deliver on that, and to be able to kind of inspire people around them to deliver. So, great communicators, able to make tough decisions. We are facing quite challenging times. So, being able to be a confident decision maker, having that kind of emotional intelligence. The best leaders as well that I've come across are those that are quite comfortable in who they are as leaders, and that kind of authenticity,
Yeah. Well, actually, that leads me on nicely, because that's the next question, I suppose, is about confidence. When I've seen great leaders, I've always thought just full of confidence, and it can be hard, I would imagine, when the odds are stacked against you to make a certain decision and think that's right. How do you build that confidence when, as I say, the odds are stacked against you?
Oh, do you know what? Confidence is something I love that topic, because I think I get so many people coming to me and saying, Jen, I've lost my confidence, because I work with a lot of leaders who are transitioning into new leadership roles. So maybe they taking the bold move to move up to maybe a strategic leadership position, up to executive, sort of all levels. So so in that time, making that bold change and taking stepping into something new, I get so often, I'm not feeling confident. I've completely lost my confidence. But I had this interesting situation last year, and I had someone say this exact thing, and in 15 minutes we were able to solve that. We were able to, because actually what I think about confidence is there's always some area in your life that you are still confident in, so you haven't lost your confidence. But I think what people do is they don't explore that further, or explore it enough to actually look at what's it telling you, because I think confidence and learning are closely linked, and so often if someone's saying that they're not feeling confident, there's a learning gap. So it's kind of, so in this particular example, I was working with a leader moving into her first executive role. And actually I was able to say, what would make you feel more confident? And just instantly she said, if I could get a better handle on the numbers, I'm managing a huge budget now. The numbers aren't my strong point. If I could get a handle on that, then I'd be fine. So it's just, in 15 minutes, we were able to go from her not feeling confident to being like, actually, it's just this one thing, and she could see you could sit down, she sat down with, one of the finance heads of finance and was able to kind of get more comfortable on that. And then she was away flying. So confidence for me is, I love it, because I do think, I'm like, oh, what's the learning here? Where's the learning? And actually, how do we shift that? Because, and so your question, how do we have confidence when the odds are stacked against us, is a really interesting one, because I think sometimes it is just around, maybe it's maybe you're in new territory,
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But I think it's always leaning into where you feel confident, using your strengths, reflecting on where you've maybe in the past handled stuff. Because I think we have an incredible capacity to learn, grow, and handle stuff. When the shit hits the fan, we have an incredible capacity to handle it. We just sometimes we underestimate ourselves.
No, absolutely. I think that you're right. I think being able to understand or to learn is a really interesting point. Actually, I find that really interesting, because I think we've all found ourselves there, and perhaps sometimes it's quite a lonely place to be a leader. Do you think it's quite valuable and important to have perhaps a mentor or a coach to help you along, like you say, in those first steps if you're just moving into a leadership role?
Oh, yeah, I think, as a leader, I mean, look, I think being a leader has always, it's always been challenging. It can be quite isolating. You're extremely visible. There's the weight of responsibility, so that, that's probably an age-old thing. But, throw in the fact that, now, the current climate, and we've got leaders working from home. So they're spending so much time in their own heads, which isn't necessarily always the best place to be. If you've got too much time by yourself thinking, we can go into that those the more negative thought. So I think, and then I think also everybody expects leaders to have the answer sometimes, or actually leaders put too much pressure on themselves to have all the answers. So you can imagine, I think it's just all the overthinking and the time that often is the greatest barrier, the greatest block for leaders. So absolutely, if you think about that, if you can then have that leader having a support crew around them to gain perspective, to kind of ground them, to challenge them, it's hugely important. And I think we kind of caught up earlier about if you look at sports people, if we look at elite athletes and sports people, even from an early age, they've all got a support crew around them of like specialists who keep them right. And I think we're now starting to see that more in organizations, and not just limited to execs, because execs, I am an exec coach, but I think that we're missing a trick by not giving more support through mentorship and coaching to leaders coming through the ranks. Because I have so many times, I have first-time leaders saying, this is my first-time leadership management role, and I'm just been thrown into it. And if you think about that, if you're not giving someone coaching and mentoring until they're much, further up the track, I think it's just missing a trick. And by that point, there's so many ingrained, sometimes bad habits or things,
Yes.
So I think, I absolutely, in answer to your question, it's hugely important. I think, we all benefit from that. And now in this virtual world, more than ever, because sometimes we can just have too much time, not interacting with people. And
it's a very good point, though. More time on your own thinking, it can be a real challenge, actually. So, I mean, the other thing with leadership is that you mentioned it before. Actually, you take on a lot. You take on responsibility for a lot, and perhaps it's just not practical. I know you mentioned before about getting the right team around you. Is that a key to helping you to manage probably the barrage of work that's coming your way?
Yeah, and I think this can be, and why I love working with leaders who are transitioning, because quite often we stay stuck in the leadership role that we've left behind. So you've maybe been like a leader, just a subject matter expert leader of that team, and now you've moved into more of a strategic leader. So you've gone from maybe being stuck more in the kind of day-to-day of your team to then focusing more on kind of vision and strategy. So often, often people are stuck in operating at that operational level and not moving into that strategic, So So I think that that's about how I think it's so important for leaders to take the time and space to be thinking about really having clarity around their role. What's the value of their role? What actually, what are their roles and responsibilities? Where's the best use of their time and energy? And then making sure that they've got the right team around them to do the other work, because I'm working with more and more burnt out leaders, and it's high achievers, so quite often it's your awesome, your high achieving talent that are burning out faster than ever before. And sometimes it's because they don't necessarily know how to say no. They maybe haven't set boundaries. They maybe don't have full clarity around their role. Maybe they lack confidence and stay stuck in doing the stuff that feels safe. So I think there's so much around getting clarity and setting boundaries and being able to say no, to focus and making sure you're focusing your time and energy on the right things to manage workload as a leader.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think that's a big thing, as we touched on before. When people move from that managerial role perhaps into leadership role or a more senior leadership role, there's less of those tangible outputs because you're managing the team, and you don't quite have that, so it can be a challenge. But I suppose one of the things we're working on a campaign right now for inclusion and creating a more inclusive workplace. And from a leadership point of view, how important today is inclusion in a leadership style and a leadership style throughout our workplace today?
I love that you're doing a campaign around that, and I think it's hugely important. And I think we're moving away from that kind of leader as kind of a director and all-knowing, all-powerful one to seeing how the best leaders are those that kind of inspire, empower, accelerate. And I think that's it. If we're looking at leaders of the future and driving forward growth, that absolutely, by being an inclusive leader is very much about giving your people a voice. And I mean, it makes sense. When you talk about it, it's just, of course, why would you not? Why would you not solve some of your problems by using your best and brightest and leveraging the kind of the power of the hive mind of all those awesome people that you've recruited into your organization? And so sometimes it's just like it's a no-brainer, but it doesn't happen that often. It doesn't happen well that often, because sometimes with hierarchy, at the very top, you are like, you're listening to the people maybe just below you, but actually you're missing a trick by not, giving, I guess, everyone a voice as far as.
And so, as part of that inclusion, or I suppose it's about empowering your team. It's about giving them the ownership to take that on. How do you help the people that you work with to do that? How do you encourage them to have that confidence that when perhaps it's just not being their normal style?
Yeah, and I think I guess with coaching, one of the most powerful things about coaching is actually creating that self-awareness with the leader, because that self-awareness is absolute gold. Warts and all. Because sometimes actually not everybody is really good at spotting their strengths and talents and leveraging that. Maybe they're more aware of what they're not good at, or vice versa, or maybe they've got blind spots. And that's what I love with coaching, is actually creating that self-awareness with leaders, because I think to be an inclusive leader and to be able to inspire, empower, and do all that great stuff with your team, it really does start with that internal piece with the leader first. And are they comfortable in who they are as a leader? And I love doing all this stuff. Like when I kick off with leaders, it's a lot around who are they as leaders? Who do they need to be? How do they want to be perceived? What are their values? A lot of that good stuff, and just getting them really comfortable in that, and really opening themselves up to feedback from others. Because sometimes feedback is not necessarily the most comfortable thing, or sometimes like people are a bit afraid of what they might hear, but actually, and trying to encourage like there's such power in vulnerability, and actually as a leader, or and look, as a coach, I'm not necessarily telling them to do this, but we, the way that we're kind of getting them to really open themselves up and helping them to, some of their big challenges and problems, getting them to throw it back to their people to help solve. Because sometimes I have leaders who are dealing with all sorts of challenges, and they're just the weight of responsibility at having to make decisions on that. And so often I'll say, have you asked the people around you, who can help you with that? And it's amazing, just actually, getting them to kind of share not the burden, but actually, I guess, leverage the strengths of the people around them and the knowledge and insights. And I think that's inclusivity, because actually, sometimes leaders think we have to have all the answers, and if I don't have the answers, people are going to think I'm not the best, I'm not the most confident, leader. But actually, it's quite the opposite. When you start, it's completely the opposite.
Is that your experience? Yeah, that fear, I suppose. And that was one of the questions was, obviously there's a fear there for a lot of people to say, well, look, I don't have all the answers, and that's that fear of saying, look, it's not a weakness, it's a strength. Actually, empower your team and to encourage them to be part of that. Is that hopefully it's diminishing that mindset? But is that the case? Do you find that is the biggest fear for people?
Yeah, quite often. I often work with leaders who, that's the greatest thing holding them back from asking for feedback or asking for support or insights is maybe fear that how it will reflect on them, and maybe that's coming because they don't know everything, that they feel that's the knowledge part, that they feel like they maybe not confident, but actually. And I think, again, it's getting them to look at their role, because I had someone the other day, and and she was like, she's trying to control a particular area of her working life, and it's because she doesn't have that much knowledge in that area. She's not a specialist. But I said to her, are you expected to be the expert? And she was like, well, no, I've actually got this group of people who are experts. She's got this awesome, compelling vision, strategy, and she pulls together. She's got the best people delivering on that. And I'm like, well, you don't need to be the expert. And she's like, oh. But I think it's just, so I get it. Yeah, it's getting people to realize, as leaders, what's your role? What do you need to be an expert in? And actually, just it's a strategic move. If you can leverage all the the insights and knowledge from the people around you, you'll get from A to B faster, or you might even realize that B is not the right destination, or there's so much gold in those insights.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, listen, it's been a fascinating discussion today. Thank you very much, Jen. Do you want to give us or do you want to give the listeners an opportunity to find out how they can get in touch with you?
Yeah, that's awesome. No, it's been really, I love the questions. I think it's really hot topics at the moment. So thank you for letting me be part of this. But yeah, I'd love to, if with your audience, if anyone's really interested to find out a little bit more about leadership coaching, giving leaders that strategic headspace in these current times, I'd love to hear from you. My email address, I think you'll probably put this on your posting, but it's jen@rebelroadcoaching.com, or come find me on LinkedIn. Like, I'd love people who are listening to come find me, connect on LinkedIn, and drop me a message to just say what parts resonated with them. That would be really awesome. Yeah, thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks so much again, Jen.
Amazing. Thank you.
Right.